3 aircraft, all built by the Soviet Union, all designed to do something no other machine on Earth could do. One was built to outfly America's most untouchable spy plane. One fused a helicopter and an airplane into a single machine and set world records that have never been broken since. And one, built more than 60 years ago, is still flying real combat missions today in a war that's happening right now. Let's get into it. Number 1 on our list is the Yakovlev Yak-25RV, NATO reporting name Mandrake. To understand why this aircraft exists at all, you have to go back to the 1950s when America built something the Soviet Union simply could not touch, the Lockheed U-2, a spy plane that flew so unbelievably high, over 21,000 meters, that Soviet interceptors and missiles physically couldn't reach it. Year after year, U-2s crossed straight over Soviet territory, photographing military installations in broad daylight, and there was nothing the Soviet Union could do to stop them. It was, by every measure, a humiliation the Kremlin desperately wanted to answer. The aircraft they reached for already existed in a different form. The base Yak-25 was the Soviet Union's first purpose-built, twin-engine, all-weather interceptor, a solid, reliable jet used to defend Soviet airspace. But defending airspace and reaching the edge of the stratosphere are two completely different problems. So in 1959, engineers at the Yakovlev Design Bureau took that interceptor and did something drastic. They tore off its swept wings completely and bolted on something almost unrecognizable, a long, ultra-thin, glider-like straight wing stretching more than 23 meters across, over double the span of the original aircraft. From the front, it still looked like a jet fighter. From above, it looked like someone had grafted the wings of a sailplane onto a warplane. Cameras and reconnaissance sensors were packed into the fuselage. The mission was simple on paper: build a Soviet answer to the U-2 and fly higher than anyone could stop. Here's the twist almost nobody expected: it didn't really work. Official assessments of the Mandrake described its high-altitude performance as, quote, marginal at best. Its engines struggled and lost power in the thin air at extreme altitude. The airframe vibrated violently. The onboard equipment was so primitive that pilots faced an exhausting workload just to keep the aircraft stable and level, mission after mission. It never came close to reaching the U-2's true operating ceiling. In the end, it wasn't a Soviet jet that caught a U-2 at all. In May 1960, it took a surface-to-air missile, an SA-2 guideline, to bring one down over Sverdlovsk, proving the Soviets had been fighting this problem on the wrong front the entire time. So instead of the daring, deep-penetration spy missions it was built for, the Mandrake mostly stayed close to home. It did fly real reconnaissance sorties over India, Pakistan, China, and northern Japan, but Soviet commanders reportedly considered it far too risky to send anywhere near Western Europe, where NATO's air defenses were simply too dangerous for an aircraft this fragile. Its quieter, arguably more important job turned out to be training Soviet air defense crews to intercept an aircraft that behaved exactly like the American U-2, using the closest thing the Soviet Union actually had to one. But the story doesn't end at retirement. In the late 1970s, a handful of surviving Mandrakes were pulled back into active service, fitted with specialized sensors, and handed a completely different mission: flying through the upper atmosphere to detect radioactive contamination. A Cold War spy plane, quietly repurposed to hunt for the fallout of an entirely different kind of danger. By 1974, it was formally retired from frontline reconnaissance duty, replaced by a faster, far more capable version of the MiG-25. In total, just over 160 were built across every variant, including a small number of unmanned target drones. Decades before Predator or Reaper ever existed, those quiet variants proved a jet built in the 1950s could still be useful with nobody sitting inside the cockpit at all. The Mandrake never truly beat the aircraft it was built to match, but for nearly 2 decades, it was the closest thing the Soviet Union had to an answer to America's most untouchable spy plane. Number 2. The Ka-22 Ka-22. NATO reporting name, Hoop. Its own designers called it Vintok, which roughly translates to screw wing. If the Mandrake looked strange, the Ka-22 looked like an engineering mistake that somehow flew anyway. Picture a completely ordinary straight-winged aircraft. Now, instead of engines slung under the wings, imagine two enormous helicopter rotors mounted on huge pods at each wingtip, each one almost as large as the rotor on a full-size transport helicopter. That's not a rendering error, and it's not a fan-made concept. That's exactly what this aircraft was, and it actually flew. The idea came from a Ka-22 engineer named Vladimir Barshevsky in the early 1950s, who set out to solve one of the biggest limitations in aviation at the time. Helicopters could take off and land almost anywhere, but they were painfully slow and short-ranged. Fixed-wing airplanes were fast, but needed a long runway. So Barshevsky proposed something nobody had successfully built before: an aircraft that takes off exactly like a helicopter using its huge rotors for vertical lift, and then, mid-flight, mechanically clutches those same engines over to spin forward-facing propellers instead, transforming into a fixed-wing aircraft for high-speed cruise. Two enormous 6,500 horsepower turboshaft engines from the same family used to power some of the largest helicopters ever built made the whole thing possible. And here's the number that should stop you. The jump in scale was enormous. Ka-22's previous helicopter, the tiny Ka-15, weighed about 1.3 tons. The Ka-22 weighed 35 tons. Its cargo hold was roughly the same size as the Antonov An-12, a full-size military transport plane. This wasn't an experimental toy scaled up slightly. It was a monster, built at a scale nobody in helicopter design had ever attempted. It first flew in 1959 and made its dramatic public debut in July 1961 at the Soviet Aviation Day air show in Tushino, where it caused an absolute sensation among the crowd. Nobody outside the Soviet Union had ever seen anything fly like this. And then it started breaking records. In October 1961, it set a speed record of 356 kilometers per hour for aircraft of its class. The following month, at Be-12 Airport, it lifted a payload of over 16,000 kilograms to an altitude of more than 2,500 meters. In total, an OKB test crew led by pilot D.K. Efremov set 8 separate world records on the Ka-22 that year alone. And here's the part that should genuinely impress you. According to multiple aviation archives, several of those records have never been broken, not by any aircraft in over 60 years. It's worth pausing on that. 6 decades before the United States would attempt something conceptually similar with the V-22 Osprey tilt rotor, the Soviet Union had already built and flown a machine chasing the exact same idea at a scale nobody has matched since. But then came the part of the story nobody wants attached to their aircraft. On August 28, 1962, one of the 4 Ka-22s ever built was flying a routine ferry flight toward Moscow when it suddenly rolled onto its side, inverted, and crashed, killing the entire crew instantly. Investigators traced the failure to a fault in the control linkage on the starboard rotor, and when engineers went back and carefully inspected the surviving aircraft, they found the exact same dangerous flaw hiding inside 2 of the other 3 Ka-22s ever built. This wasn't a one-off accident. It was a fundamental design problem that no amount of retrofitting could easily fix. The program never recovered from that. By 1964, the Ka-22 was quietly abandoned altogether. Only 4 were ever built. It set records that still stand unbroken today, more than 60 years later. And it was canceled because the same machine that could lift 16 tons into the sky couldn't reliably control its own rotors. Number 3, and this is the one that connects directly to right now, the Beriev B-12. NATO reporting name, male. The Soviets called it Chaika, seagull. The B-12 first flew in 1960, built by the Beriev Design Bureau for one specific job: hunting American and NATO submarines across the open ocean using depth charges, torpedoes, and onboard sonar equipment. What made it fundamentally different from a normal maritime patrol plane was its hull. This aircraft is a genuine flying boat. It can land directly on open water, taxi like a ship, and take off again from the surface of the sea. And thanks to retractable landing gear, it can also use a completely normal runway on land. Same aircraft, two completely different worlds depending on the mission. Look at it and the design tells you exactly what it's for. A distinctive gull-shaped wing bent sharply upward where it meets the fuselage keeps the engines and propellers safely clear of ocean spray during takeoff and landing on rough water. A bulbous radar nose scans the surface for periscopes and surfaced submarines. A long stinger-like boom on the tail houses a magnetic anomaly detector, sensitive enough to sense a submarine's steel hull moving somewhere beneath the waves. Roughly 150 were built before production ended in 1973. And during its operational life, it didn't just serve quietly in the background. It set world records, more than 40 of them, for payload, altitude, and performance in its class as an amphibious aircraft. To this day, it's still recognized as the largest amphibious aircraft ever built in series production anywhere in the world. As American submarine-launched missiles gained enough range to fire from far outside the B-12's search radius, the Soviet Navy quietly shifted many of these aircraft towards search and rescue duty instead, a job some of them have continued for decades. A handful were even exported abroad to Egypt and Vietnam, carrying the Chaika's reach well beyond Soviet borders. Here's where most videos about old Soviet aircraft would end. Impressive machine, retired decades ago, now sitting quietly in an aviation museum somewhere. Except that's not what happened to this one. The B-12 never fully retired. It's often described as the oldest aircraft type still carried in Russia's naval arsenal today, more than 60 years after it first flew. And in the last few years, it found a completely new war to fight in. Along the Black Sea coast, Russia has been using surviving B-12s to hunt for something the Soviet engineers who designed this aircraft in 1960 could never have imagined: small, fast, unmanned surface drones operated by Ukraine's Navy. There's a strange irony buried in here too. When the Soviet Union collapsed, more than a dozen B-12s were handed over to the newly independent Ukraine, along with a share of the old Black Sea Fleet. The same aircraft type Ukraine is now fighting against once flew under its own flag. And Ukraine has been fighting back directly against them. In September 2025, a Ukrainian Special Forces unit known as Primary, the Ghosts, destroyed 2 B-12s in occupied Crimea in a single strike, just one day after destroying 3 more of the same aircraft nearby. It wasn't a lucky hit. The same unit has spent months hitting high-value Russian military targets, mostly air defense systems, in strikes reportedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars in destroyed equipment. A machine built in 1960, designed to fight a war that never actually happened, the Cold War against NATO submarines, is now flying real combat sorties in a war that is happening right now against drones that didn't exist when it was designed. 3 Soviet aircraft, a spy plane that never quite matched its rival, a record-breaking hybrid that turned deadly, an amphibious hunter older than most of the people flying it today. that simply refuses to stay retired. For some of these machines, the Cold War never really ended. It just changed what they were hunting.
3 machines, built decades apart for completely different reasons by the same country. A spy plane that couldn't quite match its rival, a record setter that turned deadly, and a Cold War hunter that's still flying combat missions today. Now I want to know from you, out of these 3, which one would you least want to be sitting inside? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because the Hidden Muster has a lot more strange machines still buried in the archives. I'll see you in the next one.